Hey everyone, it's Fox, and today, let's put some tea on and make Bo-Katan's headband. Seeing Bo-Katan in live action and on screen, and played by Katie Sackhoff, who I freaking love in Battlestar Galactica, and she also voices her in the animated series, just so you know, I freaked out and decided I needed to make something. I had that inspirational urge, I had to make something from the costume, anything to basically satiate that, and I decided on making the headband that she has along her hairline. To start, I'm using my Commander Shepard wig that I have on my wig head here, and I'm just pinning back all of the bangs. If you have a wig that doesn't have bangs, then you won't have to do this part, but I like to reuse things whenever I have the chance, and I'm very happy that I had this wig on hand to do this. Once all of the bangs are pinned out of the way, I'm putting some saran wrap all over the forehead of the wig head as well as along the back. And this is so that it will protect the wig head and the hair from the duct tape that I'm about to put over top of it to create the template. Once I have a nice thick layer of that duct tape all along the forehead, I'm going in with a Sharpie and I'm just drawing out the outline of the headband as I see it from all of the reference photos that I furiously took after seeing the episode. After I'm satisfied with how it's looking, I cut it off of the wig head, and then now what I'm doing is I'm placing some other pieces of duct tape down, and I am basically just making another pattern. So what I ended up doing with my headband is I took one side of it that looked pretty good, and I'm just tracing it on the other side and going to be creating a nice symmetrical pattern for me to work from. Now that we've got our pattern, I'm just looking at all my reference photos, drawing a line down the middle so I know where the approximate center of the headband should be, and then I'm just drawing in all of those details as best as I can. The markings are fairly simple to eyeball, but as you can see here, I actually ended up flipping over my template and redoing all of the markings because I just didn't like how they were looking. I don't use rulers, I don't like to measure things, I kind of just like to go by sight. So if it takes you a couple tries to get it right, that's alright, because it took me a couple tries myself. And here's the template pinned onto my wig head just to make sure that the shape is looking still how I want it and everything's looking great. I decided to use 2mm foam for this headband because well, to be honest with you, I only really have 6mm and 10mm foam, and those were just a little bit too thick for my liking. But 2mm foam is also a little bit too thin. So what I ended up doing is taking my template and tracing it onto the foam twice, and then I sandwiched them together by gluing them together with contact cement. And now that those two layers are glued together, I'm just going back in with some scissors and cleaning up all of the excess edges. Now, shocker to no one, I really didn't think far enough ahead to figure out how I was going to get all of these markings that I drew on the template onto the actual piece of foam. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually taking an X-acto knife and I'm cutting out those two little rectangle boxes on the other side because my idea is to sandwich in some orange LEDs and some orange like PETG plastic if I have any. And then what I decided to do is I ended up cutting out that little trapezoid thing in the middle, and what I'm going to do is put that over top of the foam and use it as kind of like a negative template to draw the outline. As for all those other markings, I basically just drew in slits with my X-acto blade, and I'm kind of hoping that whenever I put it on top of my foam, that if I press down hard enough with my Sharpie that you'll get like a remnant of the, marking in there somehow, and it kind of didn't work, but it also kind of did, so yeah. If anyone has a better way to transfer this kind of stuff, definitely leave me down in the comments below. I would really appreciate it, because yeah, I was racking my brain for this one. And now that all the markings are onto the foam and they're looking pretty good, I go back in with my X-acto blade and I'm cutting out those rectangles on either side of the headband. Once all of those little bits are cut out on either side of the headband, I'm taking the X-acto blade again and lightly carving into all of the Sharpie markings that we made earlier. Don't cut all the way through the foam, just use a very light hand, because what we're going to do is take a heat gun to all of these markings and it's going to open up the markings and make them nice and deep, and so you can actually see them. Now I'm just taking some of this Plaid FX primer. I'm actually trying this out for the first time, and I'm going to paint this all over the headband. I did about 2 layers, and to speed up the drying time, I took my heat gun very lightly over it and had that, kind of dry it a little bit quicker for me. Once your primer is dry, you're just going to want to go in with a nice metallic silver. This was a Plaid FX color, but you can use any type of acrylic or any type of silver that you have laying around the house. I used about 2 layers here, and it worked out pretty good for me. Now it's time to figure out those orange rectangle things on either side of the headband, and for that, I'm sacrificing this NHL 15 game that we had on our shelves. And this is a little hack for you guys. If you ever need some type of a thin plastic like I need here, I like to take, DVDs or even like Blu-rays and just cut out the plastic that they have on the front. It's pretty cheap. I'm sure you have a ton of them laying around your house. I mean, you don't have to throw out your game or your movie. You can just, if you don't have something that you need anymore, there you go. You've got free plastic around your house. And to kind of diffuse that plastic just a little bit, I'm taking 100 grit sandpaper and roughly sanding up the surface. As you can see, the more I sand, the more cloudy it gets, and that's exactly what we want to get. And to give this plastic an orange tint, I'm lucky enough to have a husband that does mini painting, so he has a ton of alcohol inks at my disposal that I can use. So I'm just taking some orange alcohol ink, and a little bit later I end up using a little bit of yellow to get the orange color that I really want. Don't think that you need to use alcohol inks. You can definitely use watered down acrylics. I have done that in the past, and it works just as well. I still wanted a little bit more of diffusion, so I'm using this foam closed cell stuff. I think I got it from a chair I bought last year, and I'm just super gluing my rectangle of acrylic on top of it. Now that our plastic is the appropriate color of orange and appropriate level of diffusion, I'm taking the little pieces of rectangle that we cut out of the foam earlier and using that as a sort of a guide to give me the approximate size and shape that I need to put into the headband. And from there, I'm just taking those rectangles and basically smashing them into that opening. They fit pretty nicely and pretty snug just without any type of super glue. But as you can see here, I go on the back and I put a little bit of super glue just for a little bit of reinforcement. I do intend on putting some type of LED in this in the future, but for now, this is what I'm doing. We're almost done, and all that I need to do now is just put a little bit of black wash on the headband to get it a nice grungy look and get all that black into the crevices so we can see all those nice markings that we put on there. And in order to wear this, I ended up using a metal headband that I had laying around and just super glued it to the inside of the headband. Because the headband was so thin, it really conformed to it really nicely. And if there's any overhang, you can just take some tin snips to those and cut them off. And there you have it. That's all that there is to making this Bo-Katan headband. As I said before, I am going to be putting some LEDs in this in the future, but for now, I'm ready to go get my darksaber back. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you are planning on making a Bo-Katan cosplay yourself, definitely leave me a comment down below, because we need to flail about this a little bit more. Do you want to see something? Brian.